Welcome into the Daily Universe Talk. I'm Ethan Tanner.
And I'm Caleb Tonks.
And today we're going to be talking about some BYU sports. We're going to go over BYU basketball. Men's basketball's loss to Texas in the round of 64. We're going to go over women's basketball postseason run. We're going to talk a little bit about a crazy ending to a BYU versus Utah baseball game. And we'll go into that rivalry a little bit. And then we're going to end by talking about BYU's NFL Pro Day that they hosted at the indoor practice facility. So let's kick it off talking a little bit about BYU men's unfortunate loss to Texas in the round of 64 in the NCAA tournament. Caleb, what were your thoughts on that game?
You know, I think with the amount of talent that BYU men's basketball had this season, it was a disappointing loss. But in terms of like the game, last week we talked about Matas Vokatitis and how he was going to be a tough handle in the paint there. And having 15 and 10 from him in the first half was not a very, very good look for BYU. Mm-hmm. And he ended up dominating BYU in the paint. And so I think that game was kind of just a bad look as far as some of the issues that BYU's been seeing all season, especially when it came to poor three-point shooting and, you know, AJ having to basically carry the entire game and not having some help from some of the other guys on the court.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that they didn't exploit some of the weaknesses that Vokatitis showed in their game against NC State in that first round. Because Texas came out of the first four. They had to play to win in order to face up against BYU in the first round. And honestly, they looked horrible. I watched that game, and both NC State and Texas looked like they didn't want to win. Vokatitis missed a ton of free throws. He looked pretty rough, actually. I mean, he looked like the best player on the floor, but that really wasn't saying much in that matchup. But then when they played against BYU, they really felt like a team that was an underdog. It really looked. What I was watching was Texas playing with heart and soul, trying to win that game, and none of the BYU players showed up. Quite honestly,
Yeah.
It was only AJ and Vokatitis. He was even showing some weaknesses in that game, and it really felt like BYU wasn't prepared to be able to exploit some of those weaknesses, especially he missed a ton of free throws in that game too. He's not a great free throw shooter. So it was really disappointing to see them lose in that manner. I really feel like BYU needed some of those other guys like Moo Davis and Boscovich to show up and make tough shots like they did in the Big 12 tournament that helped them make it to a 6th seed, to be honest. Otherwise, I think they probably would have been in about a similar spot as Texas was on the fringe of even making the tournament.
Right. And I think down the stretch of that game, like you were talking about, Vokatitis missed a bunch of free throws, and that's kind of what kept BYU in the game there down the stretch. But then Texas eventually pulled ahead. But then those other guys like Moo Davis and Alexei Kostic, Kostic had some good looks in that Texas game. But he just, unfortunately, the three-pointer was just not falling for BYU against Texas.
Yeah, and really quick before we move on to anything more about the game, I just need to really quick apologize for my atrocious take last week. Last week, if you remember, I said that BYU was going to win by 10, maybe even 20. Yeah. So that was an absolutely atrocious take, so I apologize. I was way off the mark on that one. Clearly, BYU didn't want to win that game.
Right. And I think in particular with these double-digit seeds, like we've seen with BYU in the past, in 2021, BYU got bounced by UCLA, and then they ended up making it to the Sweet 16. And a similar situation this year with Texas, where Texas beats BYU, and now they're in the Sweet 16. And it's just crazy because I feel like some of these matchups are the NCAA tournament's all about matchups. Yeah. And so if you're able to get a good matchup, then it'll get you far in the tournament.
Yeah, I don't see Texas making it much further than they already have.
Yeah.
But they were able to show that they're a good team because they took down Gonzaga. And Gonzaga, consistently they're a great team in the West Coast Conference. Yeah. I think that this season they showed some weaknesses that they haven't had in previous seasons. I was surprised to see them get a 3 seed. I think that was mostly riding on the fact that they've been a historic program in the past few years, kind of like a charity seed. But you're right. It totally was a matchup there. I think Texas ended up with a weak 3 seed as their matchup, and Texas has the heart right now. They're hot right now, and they have the heart to be able to beat a team like that.
And one other thing is like Kevin Young mentioned in a post game against Texas about how he feels like they had performed better against players like Vokatitis in Big 12 play, and that kid had performed better on defense against players like Vokatitis. And so seeing him go off for that much was kind of, I think, a little bit of a surprise to Kevin Young, and just how that performed and how that turned out.
Yeah, well, it can be surprising to Kevin Young, but it's not surprising to me.
Yeah,
because honestly, Keba Keita and Beto have not played well.
Right.
The last 10 games, last 20 games, it really felt like those guys just sucked. Like I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah.
It just they couldn't get a block without fouling.
Yeah.
Keba would get the occasional block that was just an absolute volleyball spike into the floor.
Oh, yeah.
Which is really cool. It's awesome. But half the time he spikes it and it goes out of bounds and it stays their ball. And sure, that might give them some momentum, but we weren't getting a lot of turnovers off of block shots. We were getting they get the ball back and make a 3 on the next possession, kind of blocks, or it was Beto jumping up and just arm slapping like he's in 9th grade.
It's like you're not straight up and then you just come down like that and you're just like, man, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I could play better defense. I'm not that big, but I could play better defense than that. So I really expect, looking forward to next season, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of change up in that, the big man area for BYU. So,
and so in terms of like portal priorities, I'm thinking for BYU basketball this offseason, I think the number one thing that BYU needs to prioritize is shooting.
Yeah,
shooting with 3-point shooting and retaining Rob Wright.
Yeah.
I think Rob Wright's going to be able to get into the paint, and if he's able to kick to 3-point shooters who can hit their shots, as well as maybe the second item or second, I guess, item of business you could call it, but is some bigs. A mobile big who can roll and get his own shot, especially on offense, and somebody who's like, like a 7-footer who can hold his own, but also we need some depth at that position.
Yeah, I really feel like if we can get a big that acts a little bit like Fus Traore did, then if BYU can get somebody like Fus, that would be really what they need down low, because Keba Keita and Beto really proved that they couldn't make tough hook shots. They couldn't make, they couldn't fool the defense and get an easy layup. They could get dunks occasionally, but those are only if they were wide open. And they were so slow on getting up to get the rebound a lot of times, it wasn't practical to even have them down there.
Right.
And then you add in all the injuries that BYU went through this season with Richie Saunders and Dawson Baker early in the season, and they lost all those shooters, all those 3-point shooters, and everybody that had handles outside the paint there. And so it just turned out to be a team of Rob Wright, AJ, and the occasional show up from Moo Davis.
Oh yeah. And
then maybe some threes from Kostic and Boskovic. But then there was no production from down low at all. It was a complete wash down there. So, Caleb, what did you think about this season? Would you call this season a disappointment?
I would say it's hard to tell, especially with the injuries and things like that, to tell if it was a disappointment. I think having AJ on your team, it's definitely a disappointment to not go far in the NCAA tournament. And so I think the success of your season is ultimately determined on what you do in the NCAA tournament. And losing in the first round is pretty disappointing, I'm not going to lie. But you also have to factor in they didn't anticipate having all these injuries either. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword in that aspect. What do you think?
I like to have more of a positive take on the end of the season. BYU basketball hasn't been as prominent as it was this season. They gained, something like doubling the amount of following that BYU basketball has had in past years, and BYU had Jimmer, 10 years. Well, I guess it's been 15 years now. 2011. Wow. crazy how fast time goes.
Yeah, because he just got his jersey retired.
That's right.
So, yeah.
That's right. But Jim Romania really helped put BYU in the spotlight. But A.J. DeBonsa being the number 1 pick in the draft this season is really going to, it just has changed BYU into being viewed more like a blue blood than it has as more of a Cinderella like it has been in the past years, especially now with them being in a power conference and having developed, somebody going in the first round with Yegor Demon getting drafted 5th last season, and then AJ most likely getting drafted 1st this season, and then you've got Bruce Branch coming in this next season, 5-star recruit, most projected to go number 2 in the draft for the next season. I mean, you could potentially have 3 lottery picks in 3 consecutive seasons under Kevin Young. So I would say that's a success, because ultimately his goal is to try and send these guys to the NBA. There's a lot of, you can say about success in the NCAA tournament itself. It does suck to lose in the round of 64 with that first round pick under your belt there. But, I mean, look at somebody like a team like Kansas. Historic program. They had Darren Peterson projected to go number 2 in the draft, and they exited in the round of 32. So, I mean, not every team can make it to the Final Four. BYU's never been seen as a Final Four team, unfortunately. I mean, because they've never been there. And so until they can make it there, I don't think there's going to be a lot of expectation for that. And it sucks that they didn't ultimately, but I think there's always next season. I think this is a great building ground for something great in the next few seasons.
Yeah. I think chemistry as a team is going to be really important moving forward, just for BYU men's basketball. And so moving on here, we wanted to talk about BYU women's basketball. They're playing in the WBIT, and they've won a couple games here recently. And Ethan, I know you attended the BYU-Missouri game here a couple days ago. Was that Tuesday night?
It was on Monday night.
Or Monday night. And so what were your takeaways from that game?
Yeah, that was an absolutely incredible game to be at. I don't think I've seen the women's basketball team play with such effort. I don't know how else to say it. They looked like they wanted to win. They looked like they were playing angry. They were getting hot. It was I have never seen them like that.
Yeah.
they started out quick early. In past games that I've been to, it was kind of like they just started off sluggish a little bit, kind of had to like get into the rhythm. Whereas this game, it was like from the get-go. It was first possession of the game, they made they made a 2-point shot, and then they were behind 2-5. And that only lasted 10 seconds that they were trailed. And then they immediately made a 3 to tie the game. And then over the next 8 minutes, they held Missouri to make 1 shot. So the first quarter literally ended 28-7 in BYU's favor, on the backs of excellent defense, excellent 3-point shooting, and just the effort. Like they were getting rebounds. They just looked like they couldn't be stopped in that first quarter. That was the biggest lead they've had in the first quarter this entire season. It really did feel like the women of that team really felt like are angry that they didn't make the NCAA tournament. And I think they've proved that they should have been in the NCAA tournament after what they've done to Alabama A&M last week and what they did to Missouri.
Yeah.
So was there anything that you liked about the game?
I know Delaney Gibb. She was the 3rd fastest player to score 1,000 points. Is that right? And she had like 29 against Missouri. But then it felt like BYU was shooting lights out in that Missouri game. It shot career high 14 or season high 14, and Delaney Gibb had the 7 threes as well. And so, do you think this going into Stanford? Do you think this performance against Missouri is going to be sustainable going into that Stanford game? Because we know Stanford is a historically good program in women's basketball. So.
Yeah, I think Stanford's going to be a hurdle for them. They do get to host at home, which is a big deal. That game's tonight actually, so I'll be at that game. I don't know if they're going to be able to lead Stanford like they did Missouri, where they were leading by 31. Honestly, some of the reason they were able to decimate Missouri the way they did was because Missouri shot horribly. They didn't rebound, they didn't shoot well, and I mean, Missouri has some great 3-point shooters, but they just nothing was hitting for them tonight. They had some open looks that they missed. BYU did close out pretty good on just about every shot that they made, but there were some opportunities that Missouri just missed, and BYU had a historic night with Delaney Gibb, like you said, going 7 for 11 from the 3-point line, making a career most 7 threes, and going off when the team making 14 3-pointers in the game. That was just insane. I really don't know if that's sustainable against a team like Stanford. I think it'll be closer. I think it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to go ahead and win this one, but I think they have a good shot. I think the way they've been playing, they have some momentum. I think they have a good rotation. I noticed that Coach Kamard really rotates that team a lot. He doesn't keep the same people on the floor the whole time. He does a good job of getting people in and out so that they have that rest. And I think when they have that rest, they are able to play at a high level. I noticed that they do a lot of full court press, which obviously takes a lot of energy, but they've been able to sustain that energy because of the rotations. So I think that they have a good shot at beating Stanford, but we'll just have to see.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I'll be tuning in for that Stanford game tonight. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how they do.
Yeah, moving on, an incredible game for BYU baseball on the road against Utah. Rival Utah, heated matchup as always. In Salt Lake City. I didn't watch a whole lot of that game. What did you think about that game?
I mean, based on what I saw, it was a pretty and based on what we heard, it was pretty contested, as you could probably understand. Utah fans were yelling at BYU outfielders and things like that, and I mean, it's a rivalry game, and so you're going to get that. But Easton Jones hit an RBI single to left field, and it scored Ryder Robinson in there in that eighth inning, and BYU ended up getting up 6-3 at the top of the ninth, and then they put in their reliever pitcher, and Utah ended up scoring 2 runs there in that ninth inning, and then they had 2 more on base, so I think they had 1 on first and third, and it came down to the last hitter, and the Utah hitter hit a ball out into right center field, and Tua Wolfgram made an incredible catch coming in from right field, sprinting to go make that catch. And we actually got that right here, so let's take a look at that.
2 out and 2 on. That ball well hit to the gap in right center field. The right fielder over and makes the grab, and that's out number 3. Wow. An outstanding grab in right field to end the ball game.
Wow, what a catch. That is insane. How did he get that? I mean, the way he was folding over his body in order to hold on to the ball without dropping it out, that's insane. Holy cow.
And so yeah, that ended up sealing the game for BYU. Especially in that heated rivalry. I bet it feels good for the Cougars to get that win, especially after coming, I guess, closer to home from that West Virginia series where they really struggled in that final game. And
yeah, I mean, if he didn't catch that, I think that was going to probably, at least force an extra inning, if not give Utah the win. Really, really pivotal play there. That's incredible. 2 runners on base, making that catch to just end the game, walk-off win. That is an incredible catch.
Yeah, and I think that runner scoring to third. I mean, that guy on first probably would have had a chance to score as well.
Yeah,
having that throw meet him at the plate there, at the home plate, and so that was just an incredible grab and a great win for BYU against their rivals Utah.
Yeah, and you know what? That win marks the 11th win against Utah this season for BYU. They've won 11 games across all sports with only 3 losses. Those 3 losses coming in women's gymnastics, 1 loss in women's volleyball, and men's swim loss in a head-to-head matchup. But every other team this season has defeated them, some of them multiple times in the season. Isn't that right?
Yeah. And yeah, women's basketball's beaten Utah 3 times this season, and then that one win in the Big 12 tournament, including that. And then men's basketball has beaten Utah twice. You got football once, and it's been 2,400 days since Utah's beat BYU in football.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's been since like 2019, I want to say.
Holy
Because
crap.
2021 was when Jaron Hall and BYU beat Utah to kind of start this streak that BYU's on. And then you got women's cross country at regionals and baseball. They just won their first game against Utah. And then you have women's volleyball, women's soccer, and women's swim. And so BYU's really, really owning their rivals. And it's good to see for BYU fans.
Yeah, well, I guess sometimes you come into the truck stop conference and you just get beat.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't. It's not an easy conference like they thought.
Oh yeah.
So, you know what? They're gonna have to if they're gonna win consistently, they're gonna have to prove it, and they got to go through BYU, and clearly that has not been easy for them.
Yeah.
So
for
guess
sure.
what? Hopefully that can continue, because it makes my heart happy to
Oh,
see
yeah.
that.
Oh, I'm sure.
I certainly don't like to watch Utah win against BYU.
Yeah.
I do not like listening to what happens when BYU loses to
Oh yeah.
Utah.
Oh yeah. It's a tough listen to sometimes.
Yeah.
And so going into BYU football pro day that happened this past week, there were some pretty surprising performances. I want to say, Ethan, do you want to share some of those?
Yeah, I was there, so I got to see firsthand some of those incredible performances. Number one, we got to get this out of the way before we even talk about anything else.
Yeah.
Maury Bamba's 40-yard dash.
Yeah.
Holy crap. I mean, what an athletic freak, seriously. They timed him, what, a 4.31, is that what we said?
I think it was like 4.27, but some scouts hand timed him at like a 4.19.
That's right.
And so it's like insane speed for Maury Bamba.
Yeah, I mean, that's if 4.19 is accurate, that's the fastest ever at the combine, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, because Xavier Worthy had a 4.21 before he was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs.
So yeah, 4.19, that, man, faster than Xavier Worthy is actually insane.
Yeah.
So Maury Bamba probably has a good shot at making it somewhere at the very least. Even if he doesn't get drafted, he might get signed. So what an incredible performance from him. It was really interesting being there in person because you could just see how built these guys are. What work they've put into making themselves, really sculpting themselves. I don't know what other word to use other than that, because that's really what they looked like. Great gods, like they were so muscular. I could not believe.
Yeah,
what
I saw
was
a
looking
picture.
at.
I saw a picture of Hinkley Rapati.
Yeah,
and it was like he looked like absolutely like sculpted, like you were saying. He looked shredded. I'm like, for somebody who hasn't played in football, it seems like in like a year, it seems like he's been kind of working hard and kind of waiting for his opportunity.
Yeah,
and I'm hoping the combine really helps him out in that sense. So
yeah, and then you put him next to somebody like Jake Retzloff, like not to trash on Jake Retzloff. He threw really great at the combine. It was great to have him back. Did not appreciate all of the headlines that I saw online with Jake Retzloff returns to BYU after allegations. Like those kind of headlines. Come on, guys, we can do better than that. That's
right.
Those are just dumb clickbaity headlines.
Yep.
Let's be honest here. He was just coming back for the combine out of courtesy because this is where he always wanted to be, but he had to leave because of circumstances. But anyway, going back to he didn't look as sculpted as some of the other guys, but it was great to see him back at BYU wearing the BYU blue again. He knows a lot of the guys that I work with in sports information, and like I don't know, Duff Tittle. I don't know if you know him at all, but he's worked with him with football and stuff, and so he said hi to those guys, and it was great to see him back with some of the staff and with some of the other players again.
Right.
It felt like kind of at home. It was unfortunate what happened to him, but great to see him back.
Yeah.
And then Chase Roberts had that incredible or more of redemption run in the 40-yard dash. What were your thoughts on that whole situation?
I think he just going into the combine, he didn't have the best 40 time at the combine. And so the fact that he was able to kind of improve that time, I mean, I'm sure that was a huge focus for him going into BYU Pro Day. And
just to clarify, so he ran a 4.64 at the combine, and then he was able to improve that to a 4.51U at BYU's NFL Pro Day, which is clearly that is a significant increase. Because a 4.64, I think he was the slowest wide receiver.
He was one of the
combine.
slowest receivers at the combine.
And that just was a horrible look for somebody that is QB1 at BYU. So.
Right. And so that was really good for Chase, I think, to get that 40 time up. As far as other performances, I don't really know if Jack Kelly really need to improve his stock that much at BYU's Pro Day. I think NFL teams kind of know where he's at. He's probably going to be somewhere in that fourth round maybe. But I like Maury Bamba's chances of potentially getting drafted, to be honest with that. With a 40 time like that and his track speed, I think an NFL team would be right in taking a chance on him later in those late rounds.
Yeah, and you know who else I kind of might be a sleeper pick in some ways? I don't know if he'll get drafted, but I think he has a good shot at getting signed somewhere, was Hinckley Rapati. I was there, and I was in for the weigh-in, and I saw them do all the measurements and everything, and obviously all of the, there was representation from 31 of the 32 NFL teams there, with just the Rams not sending somebody. Kind of funny. But every single team had a representative there, and they were all watching all the measurements happen, and one of the representatives, I think it was the Lions, asked me, he said, who was that again?
Yeah.
Asking about Hinckley Rapati, and that was after he weighed in at I think 180 or something like that.
Dang.
And I think he's like 5'8".
Yeah, he's like 5'8", 5'9".
Yeah, he is a beast for how short he is. Ultimately, I mean that's a short player.
Right.
5'8" is not tall, but I mean he plays running back, so not really surprising. But yeah, absolutely built. I think he has some capacity to play well, maybe on a practice squad, maybe not necessarily on a team, but he could build towards something. I think he's kind of a sleeper pick in some ways.
Right.
So that's kind of my thoughts, my inside scoop, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it was cool to see a bunch of the former BYU players there at the combine as well, or at BYU's Pro Day.
Yeah.
And so
I mean, it was a combine in some ways.
It was a combine.
It was a mini BYU combine.
Yeah, I guess so. And so, just closing things out, wanted to just preview a little bit for next week. The portal for BYU men's basketball, or just college basketball, is open, so we'll keep you updated on all things portal, on what we're hearing from potentially players entering the portal from BYU, or who BYU might be targeting in the portal. And then we'll also recap BYU women's basketball's game against Stanford.
That's right.
And so that's it for today, but thanks for tuning in, guys.
Have a great one, and go Cougs.
Yep, we'll see y'all.